Andrew, in your work with HART, the Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust, what are some of the hotspots in the world that you're concerned about at the moment?
It's a huge privilege to work with in some of the most conflicted areas, and we work closely. We work with local partners. That's our main policy in aid and advocacy in some of the most conflicted areas of the world. Our main areas at the moment are Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia, where of course there's just been a huge war, in a 44-day war in November last year. Syria, of course, the ongoing crisis there, we have partners there. In Myanmar, we have partners in Myanmar and on the borders as well. And Nigeria and Sudan and South Sudan.
And what are the key issues?
There are multiple issues of huge issues of need and poverty, but those are closely linked to issues of conflict, and in all those places long-term conflict. But what we're finding more and more is sectarian conflict as well, and issues over land and territorial disputes. So you've had the Nagorno-Karabakh issue, which has been for a century a disputed territory, although it's an ancient Armenian land which has been, since the last century, designated to Azerbaijan, and huge sectarian issues and struggles there. In Nigeria, terrible things happening on the ground. The wave, an increase in sectarian and extremist violence across Nigeria, and it's not just in the north. I mean, we hear about Boko Haram in the north, and that's terrible. But it's also in the central belt and stretching to the southern belt as well, and across other parts of Africa. Similar things happening in Sudan and South Sudan and the territorial disputes there, and in Myanmar, the recent coup by the military junta of the just elected by landslide the national unity government there, where there was such hope for a new emergence of the democratic movement.
So what's causing the conflicts? What's the commonalities between those places?
I think all these places have a richness of diversity of communities.
Different faiths or different ethnic groups.
Different ethnic groups. And so there are historical ethnic difficulties and tensions within the countries. But then all of them have a common element within external interests in those countries, or relating to either the resources within those countries or where they stand in relation to their neighbouring, so geopolitically. And one of the struggles in dealing with these issues, or the inaction of the international community in dealing with these issues, is very often the interests, the political interests and the economic interests surrounding those countries, which prevent adequate dealing with those communities, and allowing the countries themselves, in the interest of the countries and the people themselves, to be heard.
And presumably some of those external forces have vested interests as well. They're not neutral.
Very, very much so. I mean, interests that relate to particularly always oil and gas, or geopolitical interests, and who has more influence in the area, be it Russia or Iran or Western nations. And so geopolitical influences and interests of either access or resources that reside in those nations.
So what is HART trying to do? What are you trying to do to ameliorate these?
We're engaged very much in two areas. Aid on the ground, which is through our local partners, and they're local partners who know the needs and who are working with the local people through local partners on the ground in areas of most need. In fact, some of our areas we work where other agencies don't work or cannot work or have not worked or are not working. So we're literally there where others aren't, in areas of huge need. So that's one wing. And the other wing, which is my particular area, is advocacy. And we're working with other agencies, and to advocate in Parliament and with governments internationally to seek political action to seek just solutions, and solutions that engage the local population, and look to the interests of the local people and not just to outside external interests.
And if folk want to find out more about the work of HART, where do they find you on the internet?
So it's www.hart-org, heart.org, and there's plenty of information there about what we do and our partners and the amazing work that these local people do. And that's one of the great messages, is that despite all the suffering, despite all the violence, the resilience, the perseverance, the courage of the local people on the ground seeking to bring hope and light in these desperate situations is quite remarkable, and we are there to support them in that.
Andrew, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.